I didn't have a problem with this guy until he was off doing photo shoots while people were dying alone behind hospital safety glass while their loved ones looked forlornly upon them. I didn't have a problem until then. I'm like, why is he going on doing all these photo shoots? Why is he answering these political questions when he should just stick to science? If he would have said from the get-go, you know what, that's a political question. I just want to stick to the science. I want to stick to what we know and what science has told us. I would have had so much respect for that dude. But absolute power corrupts absolutely. You can't tell me that he was not attracted to all of the accolades that he got. The moment that it seemed that people were going to pat him on the back and celebrate him, people love being loved. They love that feeling that other people love them and fawn over. They love it. It's addictive. They love it. And he's no exception. And it's a weird, I mean, he should have known better. I mean, this is when, if you don't have experience with it, this is when integrity and character comes into play. Because he should have recognized, you know what? This is great that these people, that, you know, a certain demographic of the United States is just eating up everything I say. But this is getting really political. And it's taking the focus off of my purpose, off of my mission, which is to make sure that people are as informed as possible. There were a lot of red flags that were raised. Like when he came out of the gate, you guys remember the first time, legit the first time I ever saw him say anything. The first time I even heard of him. I didn't even know who he was. Hell, he gets our tax dollars. I didn't even know who he was. How bad is that? NIAID. The first time I heard him, he was talking about, no, you don't need a mask. That was the first soundbite I heard from him. We played it on air, Kane. We remember this clearly. Because that was at a time when people were already, I would argue people with less medical or experience or less knowledge about virology than him were pushing these masks. And he's like, you don't need to wear masks. This is dumb. You don't need to wear masks, right? Let's not. And I'm like, okay, well, that seems reasonable, especially because a lot of the stuff that we heard at the time, you know, the virus, the particles, the microns. I watched this YouTube. I can't believe I watched a 48-minute, 49-second something YouTube. I never watch anything longer than like a minute. I have the attention span of a gnat. And I watched this whole thing where he was a total nerd in the best way possible. And he was explaining different micron particles, sort of blah, 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 how they measure them, how they studied them. And he was a virologist, and he was also explaining masks and how this works and how this goes through this and this, you know, and it was just really informative. His video went viral, and, you know, so it made sense. And then all of a sudden he did this 180 because he also said, yeah, it sounds like could have been something sketchy coming out of Wuhan. He wasn't saying this to be political. He was just like, look, this is what I know at the time, and this is weird. And then it was, like I said, a total 180. And it seemed political. And the media was trying to bait him into this Trump v. Fauci thing. And I think for a while he resisted the bait. I do think he did for a while. But then he took it. And that's when it started all falling apart. He started going on these shows. They were having him on as a pundit. They weren't having him on as a medical expert in a strictly newscast sense. He was on as a pundit. He was on, and then he would be on an opinion show. And it's fine if you're on an opinion show. But the questions that he received from these hosts were political questions. And they were, every time he was on, they were asking him, do you disagree with Trump on this or that or whatever? And there were a couple of interviews where he kind of talked around it, and then he just started doing it. And then he got wildly popular. And the left thought, oh, this is great. This guy's going to take Trump to task. And I'm like, on what? Like, what? You know less than all these people. What do you think he's going to get taken to task over? They didn't care. Just as long as someone took him to task over something, they just hated him because he's a Republican and he won. No, Fauci really burned through the goodwill of people. So for him to come out and give this soundbite, well, what Republicans are doing is character assassination. I don't think asking what you knew about tax dollars going towards the subsidizing of the gain of function research and your refusal to give a straight answer on that, that's not a character assassination. That's we want to know more of what you're not telling us. Because what he's not transparent about, people are going to form opinions on. They are going to discover their own facts as a substitute for what he refuses to give in terms of transparency. That's not their fault. That's his. He's a member of government. He gets a lot of tax dollars. He's going to get a 6-figure golden parachute. So yes, we absolutely have every right to ask a question. And you want to talk about character assassination. I have to say, I don't think, that's like, I guess, as opposed to actual assassination of the elderly in nursing homes, actual assassination of time that family could spend together, assassination of weddings and families coming together to celebrate a couple's union, the assassination of being able to die with dignity instead of all alone by yourself with strangers caring for you, the assassination of our children's educational opportunities and their academic success and their progress. I could go on and on. You're no stranger to any of this. If you want to have a discussion as to what is actually being assassinated, how about the assassination of Americans' faith in these institutions that we give our tax dollars to, and they act as though they are representatives of us to act in our name without the invested vote? If you want to have a discussion about assassination. Or what about the assassination of the people who had natural immunity? What about their characters? The assassination of the characters of those who had natural immunity. They were called murderers. What about people who didn't have natural immunity? Who wanted to see if the left was really as serious as they claimed to be about my body, my choice. And they said, no, I'm healthy. And this seems less dangerous than the flu. And I'm going to make an informed decision about my own health. They were called murderers. The President of the United States smeared and impugned the character of half a nation by saying it was a pandemic of the unvaccinated. If you want to have a discussion about characters being assassinated, let's talk about that. But go on, though. Asinine. He is a giant man-child. He is protective of his legacy. He's more protective of his reputation. And he doesn't realize, because of ego, that he created this mess because he allowed himself to become politicized. He allowed the response of his agency to become politicized. He allowed the topic of this pandemic and how we respond to it and the way it affects our health to become politicized. He is supposed to be a non-partisan player. He is like an NPC in a video game. He is not supposed to do anything else but that programming. No one cares what he thinks about what this administration is doing on this policy or not. He is not a government policy spokesperson, pundit, analyst. He had one job. And he created this mess. And partly because of Dr. Fauci, Americans had nowhere to go to get real information. A guy who did a 180 on wearing masks and then turned around and basically said that it was behavioral control. They didn't want to run on them for nurses and first responders. We've played that audio on the show. This is a guy who worked right with Dr. Birx, who just a couple of months ago told the world that, yes, we knew that the injections weren't actually transferring an immunity or provoking an immunity-like response. We knew that all along, so they lied. How are you and the people with whom you work freely admitting that you lied to the American public for 2 years, and then you have the audacity to go on CNN in a political discussion and play victim? Your character was assassinated when you lied to everybody? He's the aggressor. He's patient zero. And because of the way he handled this, because he refused to be the gatekeeper. He refused to say this politicization of science and health stops with me. It's too important. He didn't do that. Instead, he took the magazine covers and he took the book deal. And no doubt he took a cushy private sector job. And he's going to go cry in his big old Scrooge McDuck pile of money. But he's the victim.